Welcome to another great edition of Beacons of Light. I'm really excited today because I got a really special guest on, Mr. Guy Barone. Welcome to the show, Guy.
Thank you, Michael. It's an honor to be here.
I've known Guy for many years. You were involved with the St. Vincent de Paul Society a couple of decades ago.
I was, and you gave me a call and gave me an opportunity to come back and get it right this time.
No, that's not true at all. You had an exciting business venture that you left off for, and
I did.
And your business kept you quite busy, but now you're at a stage in your life that you can give back. And one way you've given back not only to St. Vincent de Paul, but other nonprofits, particularly Catholic churches and like the Sisters of St. Joseph, is strategic planning. Why is that important?
Well, it's a skill, I guess, that I've developed. Thankfully, God's put me in position to learn and to grow and to learn how to do strategic planning. It kind of fits my personality a little bit, and I feel like part of my mission, I have to give back. Tried to teach my children that, and certainly my wife has as well. And so this is a great way, an example of how I can do that. Take that skill that I learned in the business world and try to help nonprofits and others in that way. And I think I've done maybe 100 or so at this point. You mentioned St. Joseph's. I think for 10 years I did work there, and St. Thomas More several times. And so it's been wonderful. It's great to see parishioners or parents come together and work to common goals. It's been wonderful.
Well, you know, you mentioned your business background, and you know, the church and groups like St. Vincent de Paul and others, mission is all what we're about.
Correct. And that's what we start with.
Yep.
With strategic planning. We look at why do we exist?
Right.
What's the purpose for this organization, and how can we better accomplish it? How can we be efficient in trying to move forward and bring people together to make the mission work? And that's what it's all about, a process to make that happen.
Well, you know, our process started right before the pandemic hit.
Yep.
And we had all these great ideas in 2019, and then boom, come 2020 and 2020, and it just kind of, well, we kept going, but every time we scheduled a big meeting and numbers got high, it was an adventure just to get it all.
Oh, my goodness. And you were great as far as, you know, keeping us on track and trying to keep all of our guys together. But I think from the original call that you gave to me, I think God was involved in this process. He wanted this to happen for us. And so we persevered, and we got to the point where I think now we have a plan in place.
Yes.
And we're getting ready to execute, so which is pretty exciting.
Yeah, well, you say that the Holy Spirit does work in just miraculous ways in all of our lives. And it was so funny when we started as a group talking strategic planning. You know, from your service earlier on the board, I knew how great you were from a business acumen. I did not know you did strategic planning. And several of our board members, including one of which is Mike Nola, said, you know, Guy Barone does this. And we had some others, Sister Joan LaPlace, he did it for St. Joseph, and all these people. It's like your name came up and everybody said, well, let's ask Guy.
Well, I tell you, that was a wonderful call. In fact, I'd been in prayer about how I could, my next level of service. And you made that call. I saw your name pop up and I said, this is not Michael Acaldo calling. This is on high calling. So I immediately said, yes, I'd love to help. And it's been a wonderful journey so far, and I'm looking forward to bringing it completely to fruition for us.
Right, and you know, I had my MBA from LSU, and, you know, and this is I've been through a number of strategic planning processes, and they've been all great. But you've done such a magnificent job. I mean, the pandemic was a head spinner for us all. You know, what we had to accomplish, and the process starts off with bringing everybody together. We did a lot of research, didn't we?
We really did, and you know, first question that we asked is, who are our stakeholders? Who are the folks that are involved in St. Vincent de Paul? And there are at least over 30 groups And of those 30 groups, there's probably 1,000 people.
Yes.
And so how do you reach those folks and include them as part of this process? So that was our first step. And again, through a pandemic, that makes it a little more problematic, but we found ways to reach out and get people's input. It was a challenge, but we overcame the challenge.
It was, and I remember one of the stakeholders was a bishop, and Bishop Duca was just so wonderful with not only his words of support, but his guidance. But all our stakeholder groups gave us pieces, and we encouraged people to go online. We had one of those surveys that people could go in and give us really what they thought, how we were doing, how we were performing. Those are all important benchmarks, aren't they, guys?
No question. You have to, there's great ideas out there, and there are people that are truly invested in the success of St. Vincent de Paul and really want to help us serve our community. And so we've got to tap into those folks and ask them their advice, their counsel. What can we do to be a better organization? What are the things we should be working on relative to our mission? And they came through. I mean, we got lots of great advice. And as I'm sure we'll talk about in a minute here, the actual planning meeting had plenty of data for us to consider and to try to move and shape into a form that would end up in objectives that we could then go execute.
You know, that planning process was so interesting with the pandemic and trying to collect the data, meet with the stakeholders, have calls with the stakeholders. And in the next segment, we'll talk about that a little bit and talk about that big planning meeting. But I remember when we made contact with the national president of the Society of St. Vincent de Paul. And, I think sometimes what we talked about earlier in the segment, the importance of planning is something that is overlooked by many nonprofits. And how can you effectively achieve your mission if you don't have a really good plan in place?
Yeah, and you have so many folks that are contributing to St. Vincent de Paul. They're, financially they're contributing, their time, their effort. They really want to see that the resource that we've been given, it's used effectively, it's used efficiently. There's not waste involved, and we're helping those we need to be helping. We're fulfilling the mission without the waste. And so I think from a planning standpoint, we really have to understand what's important and how to go make things happen. And so that's, there's no question, I think more so in probably than business. Business, maybe you have a little bit of leeway sometimes, and you have to react a little differently. But, in nonprofits, I think it's so urgent that we have a good plan in place and that we've got everybody pulling the wagon in the same direction.
And that's right. And I think that, like you said, the Holy Spirit brought us all together.
No question.
And has gotten us through the pandemic. And when we come back, we'll talk about the first kickoff meeting and some of the success we've seen early on in the implementation of our strategic plan. We'll see you in the next segment. For over 20 years, the St. Vincent de Paul Community Pharmacy has served our area. We provide prescription medicines for those who have nowhere to turn for this most basic healthcare need. Please, if you need your medicine or you know a family member that needs their medicine, contact us. Kay, how can they get in touch?
383-7450.
Give us a call today and spread the word so that we can ensure no one goes without their prescription medication. The Society of St. Vincent de Paul's first cookbook, Taste and See, is the gift which helps share the goodness of the Lord with those most in need. Featuring recipes from Chef John Foles, each chapter begins with a short story about one of our special work programs. To order your copy of Taste and See, please call the Society or visit our website. Help multiply blessings for the neediest in our community. Welcome back. We're talking about St. Vincent de Paul's new strategic plan and all the wonderful things we're focused on as we work hard to achieve our mission in serving those in need. And joining me is Guy Barone. Welcome back, Guy.
Thank you, Michael.
Well, we left the last segment. We talked a little bit about that big push for information, research, input. We got all our stakeholders, sharing great information. It led up to a really wonderful power meeting, kickoff meeting.
It was,
Talk about that.
Well, I tell you, we did gather a lot of information from the survey you mentioned, meetings, interviews, and things like that. We also gathered a lot of information from around the country. What's best practices for similar organizations and St. Vincent de Paul as well. And we also asked staff members to gather information about the current performance of each of their areas, whether it's the store or the service that we give as far as meals and housing and things like that. So a lot of information that we gathered into one spot. And then we brought together about 40 folks that the board members, that currently serving board members, and several other stakeholders that were kind of gleaned from the 30 groups that I'd mentioned earlier. And we brought them into one room and we presented all of this information so that everyone would be up to speed as far as where we are today and what's best practice and what our opportunities are moving forward. It was, it was funny to watch some of the reactions of the people that were in the room because you had a lot of diversity in that room. You had, professionals and attorneys and doctors and engineers, and you had folks that are just, volunteers, retirees that came in and said, hey, I want to help. And so a lot of diversity within the room, and we wanted to make sure everybody understood where we are and the potential direction we're going in. And it was great to see the reaction on faces like, wow, all this information, look at all that we're doing today, and look at all the opportunity we have to do even better to serve those in the community. So it was fun, just to watch the informational part of the planning session.
It was a lot of fun. I mean, and because you have so many different parts of St. Vincent de Paul and the wonderful work of our society, you had people that make home visits, but they don't necessarily have time to volunteer at the shelter, and vice versa. People that are there, the thing they do is serve a hot meal every week. And, so they didn't even know these different parts, but from a distance. And they all brought something that only they could bring. And that was their thoughts and their inspiration and their thoughts about our mission and how we better can achieve it.
That's right. As we mentioned, lots of diversity that came into that room. And again, we all kind of came up to speed together. It's great information. The staff did a wonderful job of presenting where we are today. So I think we were well poised at that point in the meeting to do some good things.
And what were the fruits of that effort?
Well, what we did was we essentially went back to the group individually after we gave them all of this information. We said, if you're in charge, if you're a Michael Acaldo, or maybe even higher than Michael Acaldo, as far as St. Vincent de Paul is concerned, what would you do over the next 1 to 3 years? What are the specific things that you would do over the next period? And we got some wonderful, wonderful input. We put it all up on a board. There were hundreds of pieces of information. We then took all of that information, we grouped it in very similar themes, and then from those themes, ultimately we got to a point where we had objectives that we developed, rough objectives from all of that input that group had pulled together from all of the other stakeholders that put into the meeting as well. So kind of a funnel approach. We started wide and we started to narrow it down into some very specific themes and then objectives as well.
I know we landed on 8 objectives, and then they became 6 objectives. And the first objective, services, I mean, that's at the heart of everything we do.
Well, the Works Board did a great job. I mean, they looked at everything and they kind of combined a little bit. We as broad as we are and as many things as we do have limited resources. And so we've got to focus in on those things that are most important. So the board kind of narrowed things down to those 6 objectives, combined some things, and did a great job. And services, we prioritized as well.
Yeah.
I feel it's to talk about that as far as the meeting, but services, number one, for us to take a look at what, as far as our mission is concerned, what services do we provide those in need in the community, and to really take a deep dive and look at that. So that's really our first objective.
And that, in a real true sense, is how we put our faith into action in a visible way. For I was hungry, you gave me food. That gospel, those gospel values coming to life, it's a strategic plan objective, but that's our mission.
Correct.
And that's number one on the chart, to look at improving what we do now and looking at ways we can grow.
That's right. And again, you have so many volunteers that come in and give of themselves, and how can we kind of move them in a direction to service the way that's, again, the organization is meant to do from a mission standpoint.
And the second strategic objective, that governance and that good stewardship, and why is that important?
Are we structured the right way to support the services that we need to give, whatever they may be, wherever that first objective we determine they should be, and how we actually implement those services. So the governance side looks at our structure.
Right.
Again, we want to be as lean as possible, but effective in the way that we implement the services that our community needs.
Well, every parish in the diocese, we always hear good stewardship and the importance of that stewardship. That's where it's achieved, through good governance.
No question. You have to have good structure and good management of the organization, and you've done a great job of getting the staff in place, and now it's a question of kind of directing in the right direction, and so
no doubt
per the plan.
No doubt. And then our third objective, one of which was the stores, and a focus area that's real important, because we give so much clothing and furniture and assistance through that program, and we want it to continue to grow and achieve its goals.
That's correct. I mean, it's a core part of what we do, and we want to make sure that it's effective in supporting the conferences as well as supporting the community. Providing resources in, we don't necessarily need to be this big money-making operation, but at the same time, it provides such a great service that we want to make sure it can sustain itself. And so, there are great examples in other communities of how they're running their stores, and the group that's actually working on it now, and I know we'll get to execution here shortly, but the group that's working on it now is so invested in trying to make it the best it can be, for sure.
It is remarkable to see how the energy and enthusiasm our leadership has in implementing this strategic plan and the execution of it, making sure that we fulfill our mission. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about the objectives and also how the execution is going.
My Bicycle Journey, a book that tells a story. It educates, it promotes, and it also provides some leadership. Take the time to purchase this book, and St. Vincent de Paul benefits from all of the proceeds of this book. Please, if you would, give St. Vincent de Paul a call and let me know what you think of My Bicycle Journey.
Every great organization has a great mission, and you only can know an organization by how it's achieving that mission. And at St. Vincent de Paul, our mission is growing spiritually while we serve our neighbors in need. And joining me today is Guy Barone. We're talking about our strategic plan and 6 wonderful objectives, which I flipped number 3 and number 4. Number 3 is actually funding and the importance of investment and ensuring the success of our society. That's an important objective.
Yeah, I mean, stewardship and making sure that the resources are coming into the organization so that we can fund all of these services, and we do it in a very efficient way, and so that we understand where the sources are coming from. That's a big challenge for a lot of nonprofits. Fortunately, we have a very generous community, and you work very hard to get that information out, but at the same time, we have a responsibility to be very judicial and prudent in the way we expend resources on those services that, again, lead us to accomplishment of the mission.
No doubt about it. And really think about where we're at today and where we'd like to be tomorrow financially from the standpoint of services.
Unfortunately, the needs are not decreasing at an exponential level. I mean, they're still there, as we all know. And so we want to continue to provide, understand what are the most important things. What are those things that fit our mission in our area of expertise, and how can we go out and efficiently provide those services and meet those needs that are in our community.
Right. And, our fifth objective is information, public relations, and getting that message out of our mission.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising to me that in our survey we saw there was a little bit of a disconnect in what the public perceives St. Vincent de Paul and what we actually do. And I'm sure there's a lot of folks that do understand what we do. But as you said, even within the organization, you've got folks working in different areas that don't understand all of it. And so I think our job is to communicate what we do and the impact that we have so more can join in. And we're going to talk about execution, I'm sure, in a second here. When we do that, we want to make sure that they understand what the opportunities are to help us move this thing forward.
And then 6, facilities planning, master planning. That's always important, especially with an organization that have facilities.
Exactly, and you've got a great campus. You guys have done a fantastic job as far as that's concerned, but we want to make sure that our facility continues to support the services that we provide. So we have to understand what the needs are and then work towards making sure we maintain them and we develop them so that we can provide those services that are needed.
So the objectives have been stated, and we've got this great vision for the future. It's all about execution. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, you can have a great plan in place and feel good about it, and I think we should, because there are a lot of folks that contributed to its success and getting it in place, and I really think it's a well-pointed plan and what we need to be working on. But at the same time, it's really only a piece of paper at this point until we physically have people that roll up their sleeves and go make it happen. And we want to be as inclusive as possible in that process. And as we started out with regard to the plan, bring as many people in to input into the plan. Now there's ownership by that plan. Those folks that inputted, all of these people, literally thousands. So now we need the volunteers to go and make things happen.
And that's what's so critical, because all of those 6 areas are vital to our future. St. Vincent de Paul Society has been here locally since 1865, over 155 years. So a great history of service, and we can build on that legacy and that excellence by making sure that our plan is executed in the way that puts us in the best position to achieve our mission.
Right, and we do that with a lot of participation. And I think I was recounting to you the other day, we were sitting in the board meeting, and we were discussing a matter, and we had an engineer involved, we had an accountant involved, a banker involved. What it showed me is that you've got so many different disciplines that came to play to try to help the organization out. And there's so many areas where we can help St. Vincent de Paul, regardless of your background, regardless of what your profession was. A lot of things are transferable, and you can help this organization in some way, shape, or form.
And it's just like when I called you, and you were praying, and you answered our prayers. So it was kind of, God is always talking to us.
No question. No question.
And
it's whether we're listening or not. That's the question.
That is the thing. And the only way St. Vincent de Paul Society can be successful in our mission of charity is by people getting involved, living their faith, and growing spiritually. And I know you've served on many boards, and the amount of time we spend on prayer and spiritual reflection, it's eye-opening.
Oh, that's wonderful. We start the meetings out with prayer and reflection, and just puts everything in the right perspective. It's it is wonderful. A lot of boards would be well served to start out the same way. It really is refreshing. It's wonderful.
It brings you back to who we are, I think. That mission and
purpose,
that vision, of trying to be the bright light of Christ to those who truly need that helping hand up.
Exactly. And I can remember serving meals back in the 90s with my family and having a conversation with someone that had in this particular case, I remember it vividly. He had a business and things didn't go well, and he ended up essentially homeless and didn't have any family to help him. And so it's a tough deal, and we need to be there to help them.
That's it, because if we're not there, and you mentioned earlier when we talk about public relations and getting the information out of who we are and what we do, and we are well known, no doubt about it, but there's a lot of unknown. People don't realize we're the #1 mass feeding facility in the area. That means every day of the year for the last 40 years, we've provided a hot meal to the city, anyone in need that's hungry. And our shelters, we're the only facility, man, woman, child, family, mothers, fathers, all can get shelter. We're the only provider that does all of those things relative to our facility. If you're just homeless, of course, our pharmacy, filling prescription, it goes on, but getting that message so people know what we are, what we do, what we are, and who we are, that's what's so important.
It really is. And again, from our surveys, even our stakeholders don't really know everything that we do. And so it's so important that we inform so that more can participate in this and make it even better for our community and those that are in need, for sure.
And I know working with the members of our board and other volunteer leaders, I mean, the humility of the St. Vincent de Paul members is great, isn't it?
That's the beauty. I mean, there's no ego or anything like that. It's just about helping those in our community, and it's wonderful. It absolutely is wonderful.
Well, I'm glad you're at the ship driving our plan and helping guide us and facilitate us towards success.
Well, again, I answered the call, and I'm grateful for the call, and I'm grateful to be a part of St. Vincent de Paul.
Well, St. Vincent de Paul is so blessed to have you, and we're so grateful for all of your service, Guy. And for anybody that wants to get involved and follow Guy's call to seek and find the forgotten, suffering, and deprived as part of our initiative to strengthen our society through strategic planning, visit us at svdpbr.org. See how you can get involved and make a real difference in the lives of those in need. We'll see you again next week on Beacons of Light.